Hey guys, today we're going to be making a penny top table. We'll be making it out of cedar. It's going to be 14 inches wide by 18 inches long by 20 inches tall. It's a pretty simple project. It won't take very many tools to do, and I think you'll really enjoy it, so let's get started. Alright guys, now we got all our pieces cut for the table. These two pieces here are going to be the tabletop. My plan is to put them together with a biscuit joint. If you don't happen to have a biscuit joiner, you can always glue them together and then take a scrap piece that you have left over from what you got and make you a little splice underneath the table, and when you put your skirt around it, no one will ever see it. I have a biscuit joiner, so I'm going to use that because it really makes a strong joint. These pieces here are going to be the skirt. They're cut pretty much to thickness and width. The length on them right now is a little bit long. We'll trim those down to fit once we got the legs mounted to the tabletop. When I was cutting these, you see me resaw them on my table saw. I don't suggest that. That's not the safest way to do it. A bandsaw would be the best way. I don't have a bandsaw, so I have to do it on my table saw. If you do it that way, always use your push stick and just take your time and go very slow. But that is not the preferred way to do it. The bandsaw is a lot safer and the best way to do that. These pieces here are going to be the legs. I cut these to 18.5 inches. Like I mentioned to you in the beginning of the video, the table's going to be 20 inches tall. So we got to take the fact that this tabletop is going to be 1.5 inches thick. So we had to take that off to accommodate for the height of the legs. I'm going to run all these pieces through the planer over there to clean them up a little bit. If you don't have a planer, you could use a belt sander, a regular sander. You can sand them by hand. I happen to have a planer to be a little faster, so I'm going to use the planer. So let's go ahead and get started and get them cleaned up and hopefully get to some assembly. Alright, now we got all of our pieces run through the planer and cleaned up, other than the final sanding, which we'll do after the table is assembled. Something I forgot to mention was, you don't have to use cedar. You can use anything that you like. I just happen to have some cedar laying around from a project from a while back, and I just wanted to use it up and get it out of the shop. You can go as fancy as wood as you want. The tabletop though, you're going to be covering pennies, so I don't know if you'd really want to spend a lot of money on a fancy wood for the table part. You know, if you wanted the skirt and the legs to be a little bit more fancier, that's fine. I like the cedar because it's got a rustic look with all the knots. And even as I was planing this piece here, one of the knots actually come out. But that's okay. I'll make that the lower part of the table, the underside of the table, when I put my skirt, just add a little character to the piece. And it's also got a few little splits and all in it, but like I say, those will all be covered up with the pennies. The skirt and the legs don't have no splits in them. There is one little split in one of the skirts, but it'll be cut out when I cut it to length. So now I'm going to go ahead and join the two tabletop pieces together with the biscuit joiner. Glue it up, put it some clamps, and let it set up overnight. And then after that, this is dry, we'll get to assembling the table. Okay, as you can obviously tell, the glue up of the tabletop is done. I had a little problem there. It got a little off center on me when I was gluing it up, so I had to run it through the planer and it had like a cup in it, so I had to run it through there to get that out. So I lost a little bit of thickness on the tabletop. No real big deal. There was plenty of meat there anyway. The parts you hadn't seen up to this point, pretty basic stuff. Didn't really think I needed to film it and bore you to death with it, but I'll just go over it real quick. The legs I ended up taking and running through the router table and just put a little chamfer on the edges to knock the sharp corners off, give them a better look. And one other thing is the little corner blocks I put in here to stiffen the legs up. It gave me a flat spot right there because, as you can see down in here, I ran a screw in there, so it gave me somewhere to hit with the screw so it didn't try to walk off one way or the other. But the main reason is just to soften the corner. The blocks were just out of drop that I had from when I cut the piece of cedar up, and we just 45'd them, put them in there, and just to make sure they were all the same thing. Once I found the length, I just put a stop block on the chop saw and just run them through and cut them all the same length. On the apron here, I actually used the Craig pocket jig system, and I pocket jigged the two sides and the ends, and used the Craig pocket screws and ran it down and glued and screwed it to the tabletop. And I also shot nails, little brad nails with glue through the apron into the leg for more support. So that's where we're at now. Something else I've done, kind of changed the design a little bit, is I'm going to put this is some cedar I had left over from a chest that I built for my grandchildren, and I lined the inside of it with this cedar. This was just a little plain looking, I thought. It needed a little color. So I pulled this down out of the wood rack, and I'm going to put a band of this around the top, and it's going to stick, not for only color, but it's also going to stick up above the tabletop about a heavy 1/8 or 3/16. So when I stack the pennies in there and pour the resin, this would make it like a dam, and I won't have to worry about it running over the sides and having to clean it up. You can definitely do that. My original plan was to actually put pennies along the edges of the tabletop, but I got to the corners here, and I've seen people actually bend these pennies around the corners, but because I'm not rounding these off when me and my son was practicing with it a little bit, the pennies kept actually breaking in half or cracking, and it just didn't look good to me. So we even took some and cut them in half and put half on top and half on the bottom. We didn't like that either. So this will solve that problem. It will it'll cover up that edge and get, like I say, it'll hold back the resin as we dump it. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and put the ribbon around the outside edge of it, and then I'm going to start gluing the pennies down to the tabletop. And you can use any glue. I'm going to be happy to be using the Gorilla Glue, wood glue, but you can use anything. You can use super glue, you can use Elmer's wood glue, Tybond, you can use the Elmer's glue sticks. It doesn't matter. All it's really going to do is hold it in place long enough so you can take this Mod Podge, which you can get at just about anywhere, any craft store, Walmart. I happened to get this one. Me and my wife picked it up from Walmart. And what this is, it's like a sealer, and it's also a glue. I'll put this in here. It'll seal everything in, hold all the pennies nice and tight when we start pouring the epoxy. And the other thing it'll do is when we start to pour the epoxy, because that is down in there already, it'll keep it from forming air bubbles when we pour the epoxy. So we won't have near as many air bubbles. One other thing about the pennies, I just went to the bank, got the pennies. Some of them are nice and pretty and shiny, and some of them are tarnished and kind of old looking. I was going to clean them, and I sat down and started to clean a few of them, and I was like, no, I'm not doing this. There's 500 pennies in this cup, and I wasn't scrubbing 500 pennies. So I didn't have no Tarnex. The Tarnex, I could have just dumped them in there, pulled them out, and wouldn't have had to scrub them, but I didn't have none, and I'm kind of tight on time right now. So I'm just going to put mine down there and have shiny, old, and that's what I'm going to do. And as far as the pennies, you don't have to do pennies. That's just what we're doing here. You can do pebble stones, you can do river rock, you can do beer bottle caps. The limits are to your imagination, whatever you come up with. You don't have to worry about it being level, the rocks or the thing, or the bottle caps or anything, because the epoxy is what's going to give you the finished level top. So just let your imagination run away with you and have fun with it. Alright, well, we're going to go ahead and put the ribbon on and start gluing the pennies on. Our version of the penny top table. Just a little brief rundown of what we ended up doing. We used the super glaze from Parks. We purchased this from the Home Depot. It runs about $25, and there's more than enough to do a tabletop this size. You actually have some left over for maybe a smaller little project. For the finish, I just applied a couple coats of sand sealer and then a few coats of stain, and that's all we done to the cedar. We didn't want to make it shine. We didn't want to take away any effect from the tabletop. Well, I really enjoyed making this project. I hope you enjoyed watching. Next time you join in, we're going to be making a project out of this magnet, some hard maple, and this piece of ash. So until then, get out in your shop, try your hand out at one of these tables, and be safe.